for anybody who is tuning in, I'm Zoe from Phoenix Coaching, and I am joined this evening by the lovely Helen Taylor Jay. And you are tuning into the very new, because this is only episode 3 of the Fire 5 at Phoenix. So the concept is I invite people in, or people are inviting themselves in, to come and ask me 5 questions. So for those of you who followed the page for a little while, I have a theme every month, and the theme this month is communication. So I've been asking people to come in and ask me some questions, and there's only one rule, and that is that one question has to be on the theme of communication. The other 4 questions can be on anything that the guest chooses. So Helen has her 5 questions. Somebody needs to count, because I think she's got an extra one that she's going to try and squeeze in there. So somebody watching needs to keep count of how many questions she spins at me. So before we get started, Helen, you're a solution-focused hypnotherapist. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? I'll put you on the spot first, and then you can pay back.
So I'm a solution-focused hypnotherapist, which is a combination of solution brief therapy and hypnotherapy. So what we do is it's a brain-based therapy. So we talk a lot about what the workings of the brain and what happens to us when we go through stress and anxiety, and how we get caught in lots of ruts. So primarily I work with people with anxiety, depression, phobias. We do weight management, any form of blocks that you might have. So yeah, it's such a broad range. It's quite it's a solution focused therapy rather than a problem focused therapy. So we look at moving you forward rather than looking all the way back through your past. Not that we ignore it, but we validate it and then move it forward.
So a bit like coaching in that sense of acknowledge where you are, and although you might talk about how you've got to where you are, the focus is always coming back to where you are now and where you want to get to.
Exactly. I know that we kind of probably cross paths quite a bit on what we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's quite it makes the therapy quite as enjoyable as therapy can be, I guess. So because we're looking at things that we can do rather than what we can't do, and also learning a little bit of neuroscience, which for me is fantastic, because I'm a bit of a geek on that. So
me too. So it is that focus, isn't it, on what you can do, where you want to get to. So that is very similar. I had solution focused hypnotherapy to give up smoking quite a few years ago now. So I think it is over 10 years. Wow. And then I actually went back for a few sessions to look at the relationship that I had with food at the time. And also I then went back the following year after, had a bit of a knock for some sort of confidence boosting, and just to give myself a little bit of a confidence boost. What I would say, actually, it's probably one of the best naps I've ever had. And I know not everybody sleeps. I know some people are awake, but I would get there, like blanket up, put the sensor on my finger, and I'm like, even that would be it. I can't remember anything else. So it just out like a light, and always felt like I'd had the most peaceful, restful sleep. So if nothing else, I have a nap on your couch.
It's like having a nap and a chat. Which is, yeah. But yeah, no, and it's where your conscious and your subconscious are talking to each other. So there's so many kind of myths around hypnotherapy, and I kind of, one of my missions is to kind of dispel that kind of everything is about, people turning into chickens and running around doing things, or that we can actually alter somebody's mind. It's actually not true. It all has to be intent. You have to have the intent to do it in order for it to work. But you probably get that too with what you do as well. If people aren't ready to do what they need to do, then it makes it very difficult. Really. So
yeah, and we're very good at putting our own blocker in place, aren't we? When it's something that we're not yet ready for, we're very good at putting that blocker in place. So yeah, see that see that in coaching as much as you probably see in hypnotherapy as well. So yeah, interesting. Okay, well, we'll put your details into the chat so people can make contact with you if they are interested in having hypnotherapy or finding out a little bit more. So that being said, do you want to hit me with your first question?
Well, yeah. So the first question actually runs in from what we've just been saying. It's about our internal dialogue, and we know how much this can influence the way that we move forward. So again, this is a communication thing, because when we talk about communication, we normally talk about it, you know, between two people or animals or whatever. But actually, the communication that we have within ourselves plays a really big part. So my question was kind of, what blocks do you find that you work with quite a lot? What are the kind of main things that kind of stand out for you when going through sort of coaching, that people really struggle with to get over, and possibly sort of little techniques that they can do
yeah, so self-limiting beliefs comes up a lot, even when people aren't necessarily aware. So sometimes people are really aware that they're like, I say this and I know I say this and I hold myself back because of this. So sometimes it's a very conscious self-limiting belief, and it's a very conscious thing that they know that they not just say to themselves, but they know that they're saying it out loud to other people as well. And then other times they're not quite aware of it. They know they're being held back, but they're not quite aware of the things that they say. So I think that's the gift of coaching, really, is being able to sit there and observe the language and the structure of the language of what people are saying, but also sometimes checking in with the body language of, okay, you're saying that, but your body language is telling me that you might not actually believe that that is true, positive or negative. So that's always a really interesting one for me, when there's a bit of a disconnect in between what people are saying and what their body language is saying as well. So I guess for the people that I work with, I hear lots of they can't because of time, or they can't because of age, or they can't because somebody else is more important. So I work a lot with working parents, so there's always that conflict of putting yourself first versus putting other people first. So quite often that internal dialogue is around that guilt of putting themselves first. And so sometimes it's just unpicking that their value, the value of investing in themselves, their own self-worth, of helping them to recognize that they are important too, but also the knock-on effect of when we recognize our own self-worth and we invest in ourselves, that comes across in who we are and how we are, and also influences the people around us as well. So especially if you are a parent and you're influencing your children, showing that you invest in yourself and that you value your worth and invest in yourself and your own growth, is really what we want our children to be learning. So sometimes I think that's probably the most common ones. I'm too old, I'm too busy, or I can't put myself first because other people are more important. And it is that balance of priorities, isn't it? Because our families and work are important, but it's how you fit that in.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's one of the things where everybody feels like it's a selfish thing to do, but it's actually kind of a selfless, isn't it? Because if you're not functioning right, they don't the best of you, and we can't kind of never think of it like that. It's quite interesting. So that brings me to my next question, which is, how do you manage your blocks, your internal?
So this is also the challenge of coaching, isn't it? Is that you're in these conversations all of the time. So sometimes I'll be in a coaching session and I will call it out. Now I'm very honest in my approach, and sometimes I can catch myself almost smiling as I say it, and I'll say, I think that message was just as much for me as it was for you. And, you know, I hold my hands up and say, okay, that was a little reminder for me as well. So I think that's very fortunate to be in this position where I'm having these conversations all the time. So sometimes that's the positive of it helps me to keep myself in check. It helps me to remind myself of the key things that I should be doing, because that's what I'm helping other people to do. Sometimes it's the negative, because just some weeks it's just really hard and you just want to ignore it and you just want to not have to focus on it. And then you can guarantee that'll be the week it just keeps coming up. And it just comes up with a client, it'll come up in Thrive, somebody somewhere will mention it every day. So it's almost like if I try and escape from it, then it has this habit of coming up. But I think I am very fortunate in that, because I do this all of the time, I've got that very conscious reminder. I think I'm very good at surrounding myself with people who challenge things as well. Not, obviously not competing now, but when I was competing, the people who I trained with, and PTs that I've had in the past have all been very good at pushing me past where I thought my limit was. And I think you learn from that. You learn that you think your limit is here, limit that little bit further, or they see your potential or they see your capability before you can see it. So learning to trust those people, whether it's a boss, whether it's a friend or family member that's very encouraging, or whether it's a training partner or somebody like that, of trusting when people say yes you can. Yes, you can. And it's a conversation that I have in Thrive quite a lot, because we do a whole week on that internal conversation and limiting beliefs. And I always say to the group that when we're children, when we say I can't, there's always a parent or teacher or somebody who says, well, you haven't tried yet, or yes, you can, or give it a go. And when we get to adulthood, we don't have people challenging us in quite the same way. People just kind of, when we say we can't as an adult, not very many people step forward. So I think it's finding those people who are still going to keep wanting to push you and encourage you to step and keep pushing. So I think it's a combination of me being very aware, and if I try not to be aware, people make me aware, but also just surrounding myself with people who aren't, they're not afraid to say, really, yes, you can, you haven't tried yet. So my son's very good at that as well. He can't get anything past him. So he's very good at questioning whether or not I can or not. So yeah, it's just, I think it's quite addictive, isn't it? When you keep pushing, when you keep kind of realizing that you can do things, but that, it happens all of the time. It's just that, okay, is that a fact or is that a feeling? Is it a fact that I can't do that, or is it the feeling that I can't do that because actually this is comfortable where I am? So
it's funny, isn't it? Because actually it's the same principles of why you would need a coach or why you'd need a hypnotherapist. I mean, I have hypnotherapy because I still get, I still fill up my bucket, and I get really stressed. And so, and I know I am, and I sit in my sessions and I'm like, I talk to my clients about this every day. and you just, but we all need it. And that's kind of really again, it's that, again,
it's having that space to talk through it from your own perspective, and having somebody to work that through with you from your perspective. It's obviously in a coach state, when you're with a client, the focus is not on you. You might catch that little bit of, okay, note to self, make note for that later, but then you're straight back in with the client again. So I have a call once a month with a peer coach, and we do something very similar, and we'll call each other out on things and say, okay, what's going on there, and just give each other that space to be able to talk it through. And I think that's really important. And I was listening to a coaching conversation this afternoon, and all three of them are top coaches at American top, certainly in the States, they're at the top of their field. And all three of them said that over the last couple of months, they've increased the amount of time they're spending with their coaches because they're coaching more. So they need to check in with their coaches more. So yeah, it's interesting how we, even when we know, and it's our area of expertise, if you like, even we still need somebody to do that with us. So yeah.
So the next one.
Okay, I'm keeping count.
Yeah, I know. So how do you think social media impacts on our internal dialogue, and kind of what do you think are the positive and what do you think are the negatives?
Oh, that's such a big question. I think a lot of people really struggling with social media at the moment. I don't know whether you're noticing a lot of people really trying to step away from it. I think maybe a year ago, lots of people were stepping away from watching the news, or they were stepping away from watching certain programs. But I think I'm definitely seeing and hearing more of people taking that step back. And social media can be such a positive space. It all depends on who you're following and who your filter allows into your timeline. But I think because people have been, they've had a very up and down couple of months, I think it's impacted how people are presenting themselves on social media. But I think also that headspace of, is that what you want to see in the mood that you're in at the moment? And so sometimes it can be it can be positive because it's seeing something funny or seeing something that's that positive human element, and we get to see that. But on balance, if we're not in the mood for that, then it's that resentful of, well, how very dare they be enjoying themselves when the world is falling apart. It's that you've got to be in the right headspace for it. But it can also be very toxic, depending on what you choose to put on your newsfeed. So I'm seeing a lot of people start to step away from it at the moment and just give themselves some headspace. But it's that mindless scrolling, isn't it? And it's that even when we're not really paying attention to it, it's still filtering through into that subconscious, right?
Yeah.
It's still going in there. And even if you could probably sit there, it's like when you look to tell the time, isn't it? And then you can't remember what the time was, and you go back to look at it again. Even if you're not paying attention and you're just mindlessly scrolling, that information is still going in there. It still has an impact. And I think there's lots of people, and I'll hold my hands up and be in that place as well, that's the first thing they do. Their eyes are open and they pick up their phone, and that's where they go. So I think that's a habit that a lot of people are trying to get out of. But I think also it depends who you follow and why you're following them. And when you check your phone and when you check social media, of doing it with purpose, of, okay, I'm going in to check this, I'm going in to see who's up to what, and then I'm going to come back out again. I'm going in to check on something and then I'm coming back out again, rather than sort of 20 minutes later when your thumb has kind of been scrolling it through to the point where you've got to change your hand position because you've got thumb ache then, and you still can't remember, or you can't even remember what you went in there for in the first place. Probably time to check out of it a little bit. And I've switched off a lot of notifications now.
Me too.
I try and make sure that I only go on at certain points, because it is just the number of times you just pick the phone up and start scrolling. You think, it's been 2 minutes. Nothing much really have happened in the 2 minutes since I last picked it up. So I know that most phones will monitor, don't they? They tell you how much time you've spent on certain apps and how much time you've spent on your phone. Yeah. It's not good. It's not a good use of time. But we'll all be the first ones to say, God, I was really busy today. And it's like, okay, yeah, you spent an hour and 40 minutes on Facebook. It's like, I did what? Like, what could I have done with that hour and 40 minutes? So I think it is just that, with purpose, of what you're going in there for, and just that filter. And I don't think it does anybody any harm sometimes to have a little bit of a clean up of who or what they're following. And you know, it's a different one, but it's not real life. You're not, you know, you don't delete something off of Facebook and they disappear off planet Earth. It's a device meant for positive connection and social interaction. It's not meant to make you feel negative or worthless or a comparison tool or any of those things. So if that's how you're feeling when you pick up your phone and go into social media, then it's probably time for a little bit of either a detox or, you know, a bit of a clean out of checking who's in there and how helpful it is. I mean, there's some incredibly positive, really supportive pages on there, but you want them at the top of your news feed. You don't want to have to scroll for 20 minutes till you get to that.
Yeah, or see them 4 days later, isn't it? Because the algorithms and stuff, they can all skew everything. But it's quite interesting, isn't it, to have that timer on, actually, sort of when you are kind of, yeah, I've never done that. But I have turned off all my notifications.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
I've turned off notifications, and certain apps I've deleted off of my phone so that I can only go into them on a desktop. And desktop doesn't have that same scroll. You know, it has, you get to a certain point and the scrolling is very different, isn't it? It's a very different action. So I think it has a different connection. So I think scrolling on the phone is really easy to do. So certain apps I've taken off my phone so that I only sit and look at them when I'm working, you know, for work. And then I come out of them again rather than getting caught up in that distraction. But yeah, so it's habits, isn't it? They're really mindless, purposeless.
And the problem with the phone is you can just walk around the house with it or walk down the road. I mean, the amount of times that you see people just scrolling as they're going along the road, and it's like, look up. I know I do it to my boys all the time. I'm like, look up.
Makes you wonder what the evolution of the human will be, isn't it? When you think of like that, the ape through of whether or not we're going to have like a U-shaped bend in our neck at some point where we've constantly looking down. Yeah, it's an interesting, just being more mindful of that. And I think taking it off the phones is a good start of sitting down and looking at it elsewhere, or using the like do not disturb. So you can take off the note, you can leave the phone on there, but it's got nothing comes through in certain times. So I think the challenge at the moment is people aren't really working set hours. So people are on and switched on a lot of the time, aren't they? Yeah, that made a big difference for me, just taking it off the phones, and it feels more conscious when I look at it on the desktop.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a set. You have to kind of sit there and actually you're generally sat at a desk, aren't you, or in a position of kind of work, so you're a bit more focused with it rather than just mindless. Fabulous. So next one, if you could have a conversation with anyone, alive or dead, who would it be and why?
Oh, gosh. Oh gosh, there's so many people. I think I would even struggle in inviting the 6 people to dinner. I would struggle with even narrowing it down to 6. I just think there's so many people that you could just have a really interesting, or somebody with a completely different perspective or a completely different take on things. I don't know. Nobody in particular is springing to mind. I'd like to, you know, when you see or hear people who've been quite key figures for their time, you know, they've been like what I would call like the game changers, of people who've changed history, or you know, and to go and have a conversation with them in the here and now, and see what their take is on the here and now. You know, people like Martin Luther King springs to mind, you know, of just, this was your vision, this was how you wanted things to be, how do you see it now, and what's your take on it? But you know, just real kind of historical people that have had a real influence, you know, suffragettes, somebody who's really kind of changed. Emily, whose name last name I cannot remember, suffragettes, people like, you know, the girl who, I've got a complete blocker on names now, but you know, the girl who was shot going to school, that's now just finished her university qualification here in the UK. You know, people like that who have stood up for something that they really believed in, and it's changed part of history. You know, it's changed how the world saw things. You know, and you just think, I would love to know whether or not they thought they had that power and influence when they started having those conversations. I think that would be my question, but I could ask that of all of them. You know, of when you did this, did you have any, or not? They probably didn't at the start, but it's like, at what point did you realize, shit, I'm changing history here? Like, oh, this is all on me. The world is looking at me.
Yeah, or whether they actually thought that they changed anything.
Yeah,
because again, would their perception be that maybe they didn't think that? Maybe they just thought, well, I just had to get this done. Do you know what I mean? And it was regardless of what the kind of the butterfly effect of it, you know, was, but it was just like, but I just wanted to get that bit done, and
so I don't know who it would be, though. I don't know who that one person would be, but I would really love it to be somebody like that, somebody who was so passionate about something, who was so passionate about their beliefs, or was so strong in their beliefs about something, and that consistency and continuously standing up for what they believe in, that then had that, like you said, that butterfly effect globally, you know. And I just think there's probably not that many people who've had like one individual that's had, you know, there's obviously events that have had significant impact, but from an individual, you know, the Greta Thunberg, you know, just that one, I mean, gosh, she's so young, you know, you just think to be so strong in your beliefs that you can stand there day after day and, you know, just take that level of attention and, you know, positive and negative, and still stand up for what you believe in. I find that incredible. So I think it would be, somebody like that had that just standing in, you know, in that power of something that they're really passionate about. I don't know one person, though.
I know. I was like, it's a really tricky one.
Do you have one?
So I have a couple. Well, I have a couple. So I mean, I could probably, if I sat there and thought about it, there'll be hundreds probably. But so I would always have wanted to have sat down with Nelson Mandela. His kind of journey, his life journey is just phenomenal. You know, it wasn't great at the beginning, and he did some things that weren't so brilliant, but for a cause that changed, you know, things, and just kind of how he kept that mental capacity in jail and all those kind of things. I know we've got books on it, but just actually to have a, you know, sit down, cup of tea, and have a bit of a natter.
But he's right up there, isn't he, of a significant individual. And you're right, you know, there's certain things that he, you know, his passion and purpose led to actions that a lot of people wouldn't agree with, but, you know, that was his, you know, whatever that intention was, somewhere in his head, that was a good intention of getting that message across, or getting noticed. And and then to kind of really go on that journey, he would be a very interesting one to talk about, isn't it? And I think that's the thing, when you stand up for something that you believe in at that level, there are always going to be people who agree with the message and agree with the methods, and other people who don't. And you think to get all of that from both sides all of the time,
have that resilience, isn't it, to be able to still go, do you know what, no, I still believe this. You're not going to kind of, you know, and even I just find, I suppose he's quite poignant in our life, because he was, you know, we learned a lot about it in school, and I was still relatively young when he came out of prison and stuff, so it's quite a big thing. So it's always been with me, I guess, which is one of the reasons that he's such an. The other one is Erickson, who is he's kind of the foundation of some of solution focused hypnotherapy. So, just to pick his brains.
That was, and that, you know, some of these people that were key with science, you know, of you know, people who started to say, well, that's not how the mind works. It you know, there's different approaches, and there's some, certainly when I did my NLP course, we focused quite a lot on some of the original founders, and then people who've taken what they learned and then shaped it to their kind of what they felt was, or what they learned across, you know, on their journeys. So just really, really interesting. Just there's so many people as there that you just think would be fascinating to sit and talk to. But they would have experienced the same, wouldn't they? Of again being, you know, shouted down by people who didn't believe what they were saying was true, that had their own set of beliefs, you know. And I think that to have that resilience to continuously stand up to that is, that's next level resilience, isn't it?
It is, definitely. Yes.
Go, oh, you don't, okay,
all right,
okay,
I'll sit back down, I'll get my coat
and change the subject.
Very British.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. It's a healthy discussion though, isn't it? I think it's always good to sit and have conversations with people who think differently. And but I think a lot of people feel that those conversations need to be about changing the other person's perception or the other person's belief, whereas actually just sitting and hearing and going, okay, why do you think that? You know, what's led you to believe that? And just widening our own perspective of things, I think.
There's a quote that I absolutely love, and it's the problem with communication is we don't listen to understand, we listen to reply. And it's so true, isn't it, how most of the time we're anticipating our answer rather than actually listening to what they're actually saying. And so it's and that's been very prevalent recently.
And one of the principles of NLP is to approach things with that wanton childlike curiosity, of that willingness to learn, that willingness to see things differently. And I think that was probably, out of all of the principles of NLP, that was one of the things that stood out for me, of actually, you know, when we get to being adults, it's almost like, well, we know that now. You can't tell me anything that I know. You don't need to tell me that. Whereas that really kind of, I think it just kind of pushed that button of just asking questions of, you know, oh, why do you think that? And okay, well, you know, what were your experiences, and why do you see the world that way, and why do you think that way? And I find it fascinating. I think we all naturally spend lots of time with people who are like us. But actually the proper, juicy, interesting conversations are with people, they might be like us, but just really hearing about their experiences and really listening to what people are about. And we don't spend a lot of time doing that, do we? We kind of spend a lot of time finding out about an individual and what makes an individual who they are, what they're about.
It's just, there's so much, isn't there, that we can do to learn. We don't learn that kind of listening skill either, do we? We're always told to listen, but we're not actually taught how to listen.
No.
Quite interesting, even from childhood. You're told you need to listen to this, you need to understand it, but nobody actually goes, the reason you need to listen to this is because you will learn this, this, and this, and you may form an opinion on this. And
yeah.
so
but also, I think there's this pressure to answer as soon as somebody's finished talking, and that if you pause, it's because you don't know, or you're not. There's almost that when you're, I don't know whether it's that learned response, isn't it? Someone finishes speaking, so now you talk.
Fill the air.
Take that pause to go, oh, okay, right, yeah, okay, and then answer. It's almost that, if you pause for too long, it means you don't know, or you're not paying attention, or you're not. Whereas actually, it might mean the complete opposite. It might be because you're paying attention and because you're taking it all in, and actually taking a couple of seconds to think about what somebody's just said to you shouldn't be a negative.
No, I suppose, and that's what we learn when we do, it's what part of the course, our courses that we go on when we do therapy, is that we learn to listen and actually to hold that space. So there may be times when I ask, say, like a client, what's been good, and we can sit there and go, oh, I can't think of anything, and and I have to sit there for, sometimes it's like a minute, 2 minutes, and just hold that space. And it's at the beginning, it's terrifying because you're just, like you say, you're not used to it. You're used to filling the air, sort of thing, and it's like, but you do start to get used to it. And actually, it's quite nice to kind of stop, think, and because you're professional. And
it just gives people that space to really think about their answer as well. We're very good at jumping in with that cognitive response of, this is what I always answer. Hi, how are you? Yeah, I'm good. Wow, you did not even think about that. It's just that kind of that response of, and you'll probably hear it. You ask people questions and their automatic response is, I don't know. How many times do you say, oh, how, what's been good today? Oh, I don't know. And it's almost like it buys them time to think about the answer. And it's like, well, you probably do know. So just take a moment to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Have to learn to pause more.
Yeah. But I found it a challenge as well, because it's natural to want to jump in and fill that silence, isn't it? Because people feel uncomfortable in silence. But it's so important to give people that time and space to think it through and not answer for them.
Yes, and not make the assumption of the answer either, because they say, because a lot of the time, what you probably, the path that you might be traveling down is probably like completely left field of theirs, and you're sort of, oh, okay.
Yeah, and not sort of giving the suggestion answers either. Oh, well, they are, just give them some clues. I give them some clues to how they feel today.
Yeah, no, we can't do that. So that brings me to my last one, because I know that you're counting.
I lost count after 3, so you crack on. I've got no clue where you are.
So what's your funniest miscommunication?
Ooh. Miscommunication. Well, as it like misheard something, or I've had some clangers over the years, though. Some absolute clangers. It's which ones are appropriate to share. That's the question. Oh goodness. Trying to think. I forever jumping in and just not thinking before I speak. That's definitely something I do. So I can't actually think of any that come to mind. But I can feel the embarrassment of when I've done it. So because I know there's that many of them, of where I've just completely misheard something and gone off on a complete tangent. I can't think of any that have. Did you have one in mind for you when you asked the
No,
question?
it was one of those. It was one of those. I wonder if there's anything that you kind of that springs to mind. But now you put me on the spot, my brain will just shut down and tell you it doesn't know.
Yeah, and I think that's what mine does. So I was wondering whether or not you had.
So I miss.
Most of mine have been where I've misheard something, and it's, I'm laughing because it's normally been where it's that kind of almost an innuendo, and I'm like, did you really just say that? And they're like, and then so then I respond, and then they look at me as if to say, oh, what did you think I said? And like, oh no, nothing at all. There's normally a miss here. I've had, funny stories from when I worked in the police of just misunderstandings and miscommunications, but again, I think it's just that where people have got an expectation of what is going to happen, and so they jump into it, and they come into that conversation thinking that they know what the outcome is going to be, and then getting a bit caught out when they don't. They get a better response, or they get something
I've
different. But no, I think miscommunication. I've had so definitely had interesting conversations just where people are coming at conversations from different angles or different perspectives. But no, nothing's particularly coming to mind. It's always an interesting one when we get new players with basketball. When the Americans come over, and we have to run through the list of, this is what we say here, and this is what you say there. It's that the difference in, when they say, I haven't got my pants on, they're talking about trousers, whereas we would not be. So certain things like
bum bag.
When the new guys come in, one of the first conversations on the bus is, okay, you say sidewalk, we say pavement, just the obvious ones. But I know one of the guys said, it was something along the lines of, we'd cooked, and he said, oh, you really put your foot in it. And I was, that kind of, excuse me, it was said with such confidence as well. And I was like, oh, I said, what do you mean by that? Because when you just think that doesn't add up. And he said, oh, it's a compliment, and it means that you've really put that effort in, and it's a good meal. And I was like, here, when you put your foot into it, if you've put your foot in it, it means you've said something in error, or you've said something that you shouldn't have said. So it's that quite often we'll have something like that where there'll be just that slight change in language that changes the meaning of the conversation. I've had a couple of instances like that where people will ask for something and you give them something else, and they're like, what's that? That's not the difference between a biscuit, so for them the biscuit is like that savory bread stuff, isn't it? Whereas for us, they call it the biscuit is the cookie. So it's like people will ask. So sometimes there's a little bit, okay, what is it you're asking for? I'm not quite sure what it is you're asking for. So sometimes there's that kind of miscommunication, but yeah, not anything big. I think that's the advantage of when you look at body language and you think, okay, what they've just said doesn't add up with that sounded like an insult, but everything else said it wasn't. So what went on there? Nothing else is jumping to mind.
I just remembered my you slowed down there. No, I just remembered one that I did recently that we were singing. I work in a SEN school, and they were singing a song, and I thought they were saying carton. So I'm merrily singing carton, and it was actually cotton. And I don't have the best singing voice either. So They were picking cotton, not cartons.
Oh, I get word lyrics to songs wrong all of the time.
Yes.
All of the time. And like my son will look at me and go, "What did you just sing?" I'm like, nothing.
Okay.
I'm not singing it again.
Yeah. Oh yes, I've done that.
That's a good question there. If one comes to mind, I promise I will put it in the comments box and share. Yeah, mostly it's just those little language differences, isn't it, or mishearing? But it's never gone too far. It's normally been unpicked quite quickly, which is a good thing. Yeah,
absolutely fabulous. Do you want
that? Is that all your 5 questions?
That is all my 5 questions.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I lost count after about 3, so you're all right. If you did sneak in one, it's okay.
I've still got one left, so
okay. So you did try and sneak one in.
Yeah.
One to watch. Thank you so much for your time and putting some really cool questions. The pressure is on now. These questions are getting really good each week. So I think Jack is going to join us next week to put a date in the diary. So yeah, I will confirm that as soon as I get a date from him. But thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, thanks.
If you've been tuned in and watching, I'll put Helen's details into the comments. So if you are interested in finding out a little bit more about hypnotherapy, then you can make contact with Helen. I do recommend it. It's sorted out my smoking and lots of helped me break a lot of habits and things. So it's all good. Thank you very much. And I will put up the dates of when I'm with Jack next week. If it's not Jack, I'll let you know who it is. But I'll share the details soon. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.